Hello everyone, welcome once again to the Moment of Wisdom podcast. My name is Yinka and I'm joined once again by my dear brother and friend, a man who God has helped, with a lot of wisdom and results to show over the years, Solomon Omale. You're welcome.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
It's a pleasure to be on your screens once again, and I can tell you what we have for you today is juicy, it's good, and I think it's very relevant to everyone listening. If it doesn't affect you personally, I think you know someone who might be struggling. As a matter of fact, I know there are many people who are struggling with this, but just won't admit it publicly. We're going to be talking about overcoming addictions today. Overcoming addictions. Maybe you want to hit pause right there, call someone that you know that you think should hear this. Go call them and let's begin this conversation. All right, so Solomon, before we talk too much, overcoming addictions, can you just help us? How would you define an addiction? What is an addiction?
Okay, thank you very much. You see, this topic we are dealing with today is an all-important topic, okay? So to start off, what is an addiction? An addiction is an irresistible force that compels an individual, right, to take an action, right? Okay, an irresistible force that compels. So it compels an individual to take an action. This action itself may be bad or it may not be bad in itself. But where it becomes an addiction is that the individual, right, does not have control over it. So because it compels that individual to do what he or she would not naturally want to do, it becomes an addiction. So it's a kind of compulsive behavior whereby, okay, the individual knows that this thing I want to do or this thing that I'm doing is detrimental to my health, is detrimental to my job, is detrimental to my relationships, yet they find themselves helpless doing it. Okay, so that is what an addiction is. For instance, you can simply call it a bad habit. Let's put it that way. A bad habit that controls an individual. Now, the problem lies in the fact that this individual cannot exercise his own or her own will over that bad habit. So he keeps doing it, she keeps doing it repeatedly, even though he or she is feeling the consequences to those bad habits, right? Now, come to think of it, the second way is this. If that bad habit is not dealt with, it becomes a kind of lifestyle. Now, if that lifestyle is not dealt with, it becomes a stronghold. And once it becomes a stronghold, the individual that is involved, that is being addicted in this case now, becomes what we call a lawful captive.
Let me put a pin in what you are saying just for a moment. You're using some terms now. A stronghold, yes. Lawful captive. Just before we get there, you mentioned something about compulsive.
Yes.
I really like that term, because one of the things I think I have observed with addictions is that there's, just like you said, there seems to be something pushing the person. I think the Apostle Paul said something about that, in the scripture where he doesn't want to do a thing.
Yes.
Finds himself doing that.
Exactly.
I think it's very important that we understand that addictions are, for many people who are watching right now, they know they shouldn't be doing a thing.
Yes.
They don't want to. But it feels like there's a force, there's something.
Exactly. So where it becomes an addiction is this. You see that force behind it. That force that pushes the individual to do it, you should know that, okay, this is no longer ordinary.
That's right.
For instance, in scripture, you see the story of a man in the book of Mark chapter 5, right? That the madman of Gadara. So this guy was cutting himself. He was living in a tomb. He was bleeding, and he was living in a state that is not conducive for any normal human being to live. Yet, he could not help himself. So, being in a state of helplessness where an odd habit, an inordinate desire, an urge, right, is forcing you to do, even if it is the right thing, but you are doing it excessively above a permissible boundary, it becomes an addiction. Yinka, let me tell you something. Do you know that it's possible for you to, let's say, do the right thing, but beyond measures, You know, they say too much of everything is bad. For instance, Coca-Cola itself is not bad. But do you know there are people addicted to Coca-Cola?
You're talking to the right person. I'm never addicted, but
You were.
I was. I completely understand what you were saying.
Can you see that? Now, in marriage, for instance, intimacy is permitted.
It's a good example.
It's a good example. You're permitted to have intimacy with your spouse, legally married, if you're legally married. But it can, when that permission is taken out of boundaries, stretched beyond permissible boundary, it can become an addiction. And then come to think of other bad habits. For instance, let's say people are addicted to pornography, people are addicted to drugs, people are addicted to so many other things, smoking, alcohol, and even as little as phones. Let me make mention of that. As little as phones and social media, people can be addicted to phones and social media. Now, what is the problem? The problem is there is that force, right, that subtly or compulsively push them to do it.
Yeah, you know, talking about this force, you know, that word compulsion, the first time you mentioned it, I was thinking, but that word compulsion, what does it mean? And I realized it's from the word, you know, it's a sister of the word compulsory. You know, and it makes me think about something. You know, when you have staff or you have students in school and you say coming to class is compulsory.
Yes.
Right? It suggests that there is a consequence if you don't do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing about addictions. Addictions, so they make the person feel that there is a consequence if they don't do it.
Exactly.
So that fellow who is addicted to a painkiller, for example, now feels that if I don't take this thing, I'm going to be in so much pain, I might literally die. And guess what? If he actually doesn't take that painkiller, he begins to feel a little somehow. So it almost like his symptoms. So it almost begins to feel like that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That, okay, and that's the reason why I need to go and take that thing. Meanwhile, what he's simply experiencing is withdrawal symptoms. Because many of the so-called promises or the feelings of addiction, the feeling that if I don't do this, such will have, they are actually just mirages. They are never true. The fellow that fails, if I don't take with someone that's addicted to cigarettes, by though he takes 2-3 sticks per day, I can't function properly. It's just a lie.
You know what? There's still another background to that, right? Now, compulsion, acting like it is compulsory you do this, and if you don't do it, it's as if you're going to die. Let's put it that way. Okay? Now, because it's a habit that has been formed over time, there are patterns that have been created in the brain, neural patterns that have been created. All right. So if an individual doesn't do these certain times, that's the brain or the patterns or the brain patterns will start feeling like, oh, I needed to have this thing right now, but I'm not having it. Now, if you deny yourself from having that very whatever it is, whatever element of addiction that it is, if you deny yourself that moment, the brain will be craving for it, because there are stages of formation of habit. One of them is cue, the next one is craving. Okay, so that craving can start like it is what is resulting to something like symptoms. You may see it like it's a symptom. Somebody who is addicted to drugs, for instance, if the person doesn't take it, you see some of them having withdrawal symptoms or something like that. Now, that in itself is craving. Do you know that the seed of that desire in you, in your mind or in your brain already can start shouting like a shout. A child can start shouting and yelling and start craving and throwing tantrums for something. So these are reactions to it. But in earnest, they are not going to kill you. Do you understand?
And I think that's so key for us to stress that the promises that addictions give you, the feelings that they give you, they are really just feelings. They are not real. They are mirages. They are lies. Now, there are people we're going to get into that just in a minute. There are people God has helped to overcome addictions, and they can tell you that it is possible to break addictions. You wanted to say something just before?
Oh yeah, talking about feelings and promises. Addictions, actually, they can promise you that momentary excitement. Let me put it that way. Momentary satisfaction. For instance, when you meet people that are broken free from maybe drugs and alcohol and cigarette or smoking or whatever substances like that, you will see that, okay, at that moment that they take it, they feel high.
That's right.
That is that momentary excitement. Now, the force behind it will compel you to you want to keep feeling high. They want to keep, having that momentary excitement or momentary satisfaction. And the power behind it, there are actually two. One is external, pushing the individual to do it. The other is the inner craving, yelling for it. So the addicted becomes entangled.
Oh, and that's why I use that word in lawful captivity. Well, because of time, we will need to bring this conversation to a close on this episode. I want to encourage you, stay tuned. This conversation is going to continue. But before we bring it to a close on this particular episode, we titled this Overcoming Addictions. So, just off the top of your head, before we come back in the next episode to talk some more, how can we overcome addiction?
Okay, anyways, there are certain processes. There are many ways to overcome addictions, but just for the want of time, one of them is exposure. Well, what I mean by exposure is you must be ready to expose what you are addicted to. At first, the lie is that there is no addict that would want to agree to it, right? But once you want to break out of it, you should be willing to expose it. The Bible said that he that conceals his sin shall not prosper. So if you keep hiding it, the power of addiction is that it thrives in secrecy. That's right. Right? There are some things you cannot tell people. Of course, it's not easy because you don't want to feel rejected, stigmatized, condemned, judged. So it's not easy for people to open up, right? So the first thing to do is be ready to expose. You know what? You can talk to a brother, you can talk to a friend that you trust first. A friend that you trust, because it's not everyone you can talk to. You can talk to your pastor, you can talk to anyone that you feel you can confide in and say, you know what, this is what I'm dealing with in recent time. I think this has been going on for a while now. Please help me. How can I get over it? How can I get out of it? The moment you expose it, it breaks the power. It's like bringing darkness to light. So the moment you bring that dark operations to light, darkness, it loses its power. The Bible said that the light shines forth in darkness, and darkness cannot resist it. But as long as you keep hosting it, as long as you keep shielding it, as long as you keep defending it, some people can even go defensive. You tell them, do you know, maybe a spouse telling the husband or wife that, do you know you are becoming too addicted to TB, you are becoming too addicted to your phone, you are becoming too addicted to this drink, you are becoming too addicted to this habit, and all of a sudden the person is defensive. As long as you keep defending that habit, you are partnering with it, right? But if you are going to break free, be ready to expose it and said, you know what, I'm exposing this. You cannot have dominion over me. So that is a very first step. There are other steps up to step 7, but to I take, yes, exposure. Episodes. And just to re-echo what you said, addictions thrive in secrecy. And once you can bring that darkness, that dark thing, you look, everyone watching this was been through this journey. I mean, I have on so many levels. You know when it becomes a darkness. And what Solomon is saying is, when you bring that darkness to light, it loses that power. It's that now that compulsive power we've been talking about, it breaks it off. Yes. You know who the devil wants to destroy? He first of all isolates. Yes. And so once you can understand that and consciously humble yourself, bring yourself back into accountability. And I want to believe you and I were open to speak with anyone in the comment section who might want to have a conversation about this. But I think it's also key that you have people in your life, right? People who know you,
okay? People who can call you to account, people who have your phone number, people who can text and WhatsApp you and say, okay, 2 weeks ago we had a conversation about this. How are you
making progress?
All right, it's easy for some of us to speak, to you, but we might not know you personally. So I want to encourage you as we bring this episode to a close. This is our moment of wisdom to share with you this morning, afternoon, whenever you are listening to this. You can overcome that addiction. And maybe it's not you, actually. Maybe you are a mother, you have a teenage son, you have a teenage daughter, and you are seeing some trends and you know addiction has set in. You know what? They can in their against God. I want to also urge you, stay tuned to this podcast. The next episode, we're going to be getting into the other steps that Solomon mentioned. And we're going to be talking about some more things about how people even get addicted in the first place, so that we all can watch out and live better lives for God. This has been Moments of Wisdom podcast. It's been Yinka and Solomon. I just want to say we love you, we believe in you, and we're praying for you.